This is Dr. Crystal Ellerson, and in this video we will learn about the Home ribbon in Microsoft Word for Windows. This is the full version, the desktop version. If your version looks like, just a second, looks like this, your menu up at the top looks like this, you are in Word Online. This is not the full version of Microsoft Word. You won't have the same items in the same location. Okay, so if what you're seeing up here is links to this version, you're not in the right one. Close the window, open Microsoft Word from your desktop, and then open the file you want to work on. So, your menu should look like this. If your menu is shrunk, okay, where it's only showing this, what you want to do is go to the Home ribbon, so it'll drop down, and then go all the way to the right end, and there's a little arrow here where my mouse is circling. Click on that arrow and choose Always Show Ribbon. This will keep this available. Now, sometimes I call these tabs, sometimes I call them menus, but Microsoft actually calls them ribbons, and so that's what I will try to stick with. On the Home ribbon, we have paste options. We have the Clipboard section, so anything that you have saved in memory, if you click on the little dropout box, it will show up the different things that we're going to have there, or you can clear all of that. And we can go and grab some text from someplace. So I have pulled up a Sherlock Holmes quote. I'm just copying it from the internet. And I'm going to go in, and there are different ways to paste. So let's go down and take a look at how this will come in. If you just hit Control V, okay, the text will come in the default. However, you could go and you could have it keep its original format, or the text only, and so it comes in however you have this set up, okay? You could have it merge the format from where you pasted from to the document you're pasting into, or you can keep the source formatting so it'll look like it looked online with the same spacing, fonts, and so on. So here I've pasted in two versions of it. We'll move this along to the next page. This is the same text, but it doesn't look quite the same because we have different fonts. Okay, this one's in Times New Roman, this one is in Georgia. This one is bold. Down here, this one is not. This one has indents, this one does not. And so this is a different type of paste. When you have an image that you're pasting in, you get additional options, or if you have charts. Most of the time you'll have these three. And you can choose which one you want to set for default. So if you always just want to keep the text only, then set your default paste for keeping the text only. There are sometimes additional options in here if you want to paste a link to something, if you want to have it come in unformatted, if you want to keep the HTML coding from, say, a website you've copied to paste from. You can choose those in here, but you need to be aware of the different options. All right, when you highlight some text, let's say I don't want this part, or I want to move that part. I could copy it, and if I copy it, then I come down and I can just paste it in, and I still have the paste options. Notice that I also have a picture. If I choose to paste it in as a picture, I can't edit it, okay? It is now an image. I can't go in and like double click on the text and edit that. Sometimes we want that, sometimes we don't. However, if I go up and instead of choosing copy, I choose cut, it will delete the text. It's saved in memory, and so I can come down and I can paste just that text. So what I'll want to do is go below the image of it, and then I can choose. Again, do I want to paste it, keep the source, merge it, make it an image, or keep the text only? And I'm going to go with keeping the text only. But notice this one I can still edit. I can still make selections within it. And I have moved it from up here. So that's the difference between cut and just copy. Cut automatically copies. Now let's say that I actually like this font, Georgia, right here, better than I like Times New Roman. I can come down here and go up to highlight what I like, go to Format Painter, and when I click on Format Painter, I can go and I can paste that format onto this one and make it match. So that's what Format Painter is. Once you have something you like, you found it, you want to put it on another section, you can use that to copy the format you like and paste it in a different section. That's how you use the copy, the paste, the cut, and the Format Painter. Now, most people already know how to use the font box, so I'm going to go through that really quickly, but you click on this section, whatever you're highlighted in, and choose the font that you want. We choose serif fonts, which are body fonts. Microsoft Word lies up here where it says things are a body font. This is not a body font. This is a sans serif font, which is a font type, and it is very blocky. It's a heading font. This one up here where it says headings is also a heading font. Microsoft doesn't have it quite set up properly. Body fonts are usually Times New Roman, Georgia, things like that. Heading fonts are usually Calibri, this Aptos up here, Tahoma, Arial. Those would work very well for heading fonts. Okay. Bold, italics, these are forms of emphasis. So is underline, but we will not use underline in this class because it interferes with readability. Strike through, if you're wanting to mark things off of a list. Working with math, which we don't cover in this class, but superscripts and subscripts if you need that. This type of emphasis is there for text effects, okay? Outlines, shadows, reflections, glows, number styles, things like this. Most of the time we are not going to use this, not even for design, because we don't want to interfere with readability. The text has to be clear. We will from time to time use the highlighter. We will definitely use the color changing. Okay, so you will end up using design colors. You'll come in here. You have options for more colors. You can set up even custom colors. You can go and find what the online hex number is, so if you want to match a color from a website. Or you can find the RGB numbers, which stands for red, green, and blue. And there's a drop down here. You could go to HSL, which is a printing thing. Okay, that's hue, saturation. But we tend to stay in RGB. Okay, so red, green, and blue. And you will sometimes see CMYK. That's for printing. This is for what you see on the screen. Okay, the RGB, they are for the color diodes that come together to form all the colors you see on the screen. And so if you have different colors, let's say I go up into blue here, it will change the numbers down here. So let's say I want to go to that blue. I come over and you'll see that the red is still set to 0, the green went up to 153, and the blue is 255. This is the hex number that would go with if you needed to match for another program. I can change manually. I can darken it or lighten it, depending on what I want to do. I can change it physically by just clicking around up here, and it shows what's current and what I am trying, so what I'm attempting. So that's how you would end up working with the colors and where the RGB numbers are. You will end up needing those later in design. Now, just changing size, standard size for body font is size 12. Often Word defaults to 11, so you're going to want to change that consistently. The big A with the up arrow and the smaller A next to it with the down arrow are just ways of changing the font size quickly, so you don't have to click on the drop down. It usually goes by whatever the next one by default up is or down. This box where we have a capital A and then a lowercase a, so this box right here, when you click on that drop down, you can change the case of things. So if you wanted stuff in all uppercase, which we never want in this class, okay, but if you did want stuff in all uppercase, you could change it. More importantly, if you paste something in that's in all uppercase, but that's not what you really want, you can change it to sentence case. You can also change things to what they call toggle case, or you can capitalize each word, which is usually what we would do for headings, okay? We usually don't capitalize articles and prepositions, but other than that, we tend to capitalize. Toggle case is kind of weird. We wouldn't really use that for this class, but this is where you go to change it. Most of the time, we're going to want sentence case. Sometimes you're working with things and you can't tell what you've been doing. Okay, you've made so many changes to fonts, spacing, and otherwise that you want to just get rid of all of the format. If you do, you can choose this option right here that says clear all formatting. And this will take it to the default, what would automatically be set up in Microsoft Word. Okay, notice we've gotten rid of everything, all the bold, all the everything. Now, you can get to a lot of information if you click on this little dropout. It will take you in to where you could turn on small caps, all caps. You could hide certain text, superscript, subscript, a single strike through, a double strike through. In here, you can set up your font color. You can set up underline styles, colors. You can choose your fonts in here as well. You can set up something that is, once you like it, this is your default every time you go in. You can apply the text effects in here. And there are advanced options if you ever want to deal with spacing or position on the page or even the space between letters. Now, we're not going to get into that advanced of design in an intro class. However, you need to be aware that it's here, and I just want you to be familiar with the menu. There's a lot you can do here. Moving on to the paragraph box. I tend to work with paragraph marks turned on. This is called the show hide. The actual name for this symbol is a pilcrow. It won't show up anywhere else. When you turn it on, you see extra marks. Every time you have hit enter, you see the paragraph mark. Every time you hit the space bar, you see a dot. So this lets you know if you have too much space or if you've accidentally put a space at the beginning of a line, and then when we turn them off, they don't print. They don't show up in PDFs. This is slightly out of alignment. It doesn't line up with the rest of the text. So we turn it back on and we see, oh, we've hit the space bar, and so we need to get rid of that. This also lets you know sometimes you end up printing or saving and you have this blank page at the end. What has usually happened is you have hit enter a whole bunch of times all the way down, several times moving around, and so you have ended up with a blank page because it's gone on to the next page, but we don't see it because the paragraph marks are turned off. This is also why we want to switch pages using page breaks and tend to avoid things like just hitting enter to get to the next page. It just keeps our documents neater that way. So you can do a lot to format your paragraph, in here. We tend to use left justify. We don't like full justify because it interferes with readability. What happens when we have full justify is we end up with little rivers of white space within our text. We get this stuff stretched out oddly. It just makes it a little bit more difficult for people to read. It slows reading. We don't want to center everything. That also slows reading. Because the English language reads from left to right, top to bottom, right justify is not something we use very often. We use it on cover pages, or we use it on title pages to make them easier to find in books, or very small quotes. But most of the time, we're going to left align. We can control the spacing for our document here. Now, just because it says 1 does not mean that this is really single spacing. If I turn on those paragraph marks, we see I've got to get rid of the extra paragraph marks between. And if I turn it back off, you'll notice this still isn't truly single spaced. So what we want to do is we click on this drop down and we go to line spacing options. Here it says single space, but it has this after. you want to control the spacing using before and after. Now, if you're in a document like a resume, you're probably going to have 0 after spacing for your body text, and you'll end up using the Enter key so you can control the spacing more. In longer documents, in formal reports, in memos, you're probably going to end up setting up the after spacing to 12. This means that every time you go to a new paragraph, so I'm going to add some text real quick. Let's say 3 paragraphs. Oops. Have to get it on its own line, otherwise the code doesn't work. So now I have 3 paragraphs that I've added in here. Notice that these are truly single-spaced, but there is some extra space afterwards. This is size 12, which is, the font is size 12, which is why I put 12 points after. The lowest you're ever really going to want to go is size 6 after, if you're trying to squeeze things onto a page. But any closer than that, and we start to have problems because we do not indent the first line. In business writing, you just don't do it, ever. There's no reason to do it. So instead, we put space between our paragraphs. Okay, so another way to get to the line spacing options is the little dropout box in the lower right-hand corner. So you can go in and you can make choices there and make sure everything is applied equally. In this box, you can also adjust the indentation. So let's say I wanted to indent the text for a long quote. I could indent it by 1/2 inch on the left, and I could do 1/2 inch on the right. I click OK, and you can control how it's laid out here. Now, when I did that, and I have it set to true single spacing with nothing after, it squishes everything together. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to put the 12 after to give myself better spacing. How you can tell that it's indented by a certain amount if you couldn't read the numbers on the screen is you could have the ruler turned on. If you go to the View tab, you can put a check mark in Ruler and Grid Lines, and even Navigation Pane if you want to have a navigation for your document available. I don't tend to work with the grid lines on unless I am working with images. But I can see where my margins are. The text won't go outside the margins. And I use the ruler quite a bit because it helps me with indents. All right, so back on the home ribbon, we have now looked at alignments, line spacing. This color here is for filling things like a box or for highlighting an entire paragraph, not just highlighting one part. So if you're trying to highlight an entire paragraph, you would go and use this one here, or if you were working with tables or something else and you wanted to fill with a color, you would go here. Otherwise, the colors work the same as over in the font box. You can also draw a table from here. You can put something that if you're already in a paragraph, you can select a border for that paragraph, and it will turn that part into a table cell. You can have borders between. If you had multiple cells, you can turn the border off. We won't use this particular one a lot in this class, but it is nice to have it handy. Okay. In general, we don't want to use borders and shading on a whole page. This tends to be what we would call trapped white space. If you do it, oops, that went to the wrong thing. I thought it was going to go to the whole page. There is a way to make it go to the whole page. We just tend to not use it. Page border. Okay, so here we tend to avoid the page border. Bordering a specific piece of text is fine. Okay, there's nothing wrong with setting up that text box around here. Sometimes we want text to stand out this way. And of course, we can change the color of that border. We can change the text inside. And so if I wanted to change the color, it says automatic right now, but let's say I wanted it to be this color. We could update it there. You can also sort. So if you have multiple, you can sort paragraphs where you have the text, and you could have it go in alphabetical order. If it's within a table, it will reorganize within the table itself. And so here, I have now sorted everything into alphabetical order. This is really good when you are working with lists and you just want to change the list. So if I was going to change here, I could get it to sort for me. Now, we're going to look at the top row of the paragraph box. It may be arranged a little differently on your screen. It depends on the size of your screen. I have a very large screen. This is where we work with lists. Lists in general should not have more than 7 items in them. I'm breaking my own rule right here. But in general, they wouldn't want to have more than 7 items in them. You can't have fewer than 2 items in a list because then it's not a list. It's just one thing. So if, while you're working, you turn on the paragraph marks and you tab over like this, when you apply the list, it should respect those tabs. You can click on a drop down and you can choose what the bullets will look like for different levels. You can change it to a numbered list. Now, we use bullets when the order does not matter. It does not matter what we do things in. But if they were steps, like in a set of instructions, you would want to have 1, 2, 3. You would not want to have bullets because the order would matter. For example, if you were making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, you would want to untie the bread loaf bag before you ripped the bread out of there. If you did it out of order, we would end up with a problem and the rest of the bread would go bad faster. So think about it in those terms. You can control the indent and outdent of text using these. Now, I say indent and outdent. It says decrease indent and increase indent. So let's go down to this text here. I wanted to just bring that paragraph out. I would just highlight the paragraph and I could move it back out to the edge. If I wanted to take it in, I could move it back further in. This is useful when working with lists because if I wanted to move something on my list and make it greater priority, lesser priority, lower on the list, I can indent further or I can move the indent out. Sometimes lists get out of order or they get out of alignment with each other. A lot of times when that happens, the easiest thing to do is just turn the list off and turn it back on. You can drag things from the ribbon up here. If you look, and it's hard to see, let me zoom in. That's as zoomed in as I'm going to get. There is a little triangle that is pointing down, a little triangle that is pointing up, and a little square underneath that. When those are lined up, so I'm going to go down to this one, they look like an hourglass that's heavy on the bottom. You can grab the bottom of that hourglass by the base, and you can indent all of the text in and out with it. That's what it does for that line. If you grab just the top triangle, it will indent your first line as far as you want. If you grab the bottom triangle, but not the box, you can do what's called a hanging indent. You often use this in bibliographies. This is something you can also get to through line spacing options. See, I have set up a hanging indent here that is 0.5 when I dragged that triangle over, the bottom part of the triangle. But that's what it did in here in the indentation section, is it said, oh, she's moving to hanging indent. She's using this. So that takes care of pretty much everything in the paragraph box. The styles drawer I'm going to do a whole video about, so we will move on past it. We're now going to look at find, replace, and select. So if you click on find, you go into the find box, it will just pop up over here. This will allow you to search throughout the document. So let's say I wanted to look for the word Sherlock Holmes, or the phrase Sherlock. This will tell me that his first name is in here twice, okay? And it tells me where they are, and I can go to those pages. I need to zoom back out just a moment. Okay, I fixed the zoom. So you may not have noticed, but the find replaced here. So I clicked on the drop down for find and just went to find. That's what pulled up the menu over on the left. And of course, you could search headings, you could search the pages, you could do the results. Most of the time, though, once you click off of this, okay, the highlights go away. They don't stay there. So if you want to keep something highlighted, you have to do it with Find Replace. There are different ways to get to this. There's Advanced Find. You could click that option. There is also, you could click the Replace option. If you go to Advanced Find, this is the box that comes up. We would end up just clicking the tab next to it to choose Replace. Now, sometimes instead of seeing all of these options, you'll just have an editing drop-down, and you'll have to go through the editing drop-down to find the Find Replace. One of the things that we can do with Find Replace is we can go through and look for specific problems. So let's say I was writing something and I wanted to change Sherlock's name, okay? First, I've got to find his name and see, am I overusing it? So I would type his name, Sherlock, in the Find What box, and then in the Replace With box, what I would do is I would come down to Format. It's in the lower left-hand corner. And if you ended up in just regular Find and it has More here, you just click More to get to that box. Make sure your cursor is blinking in Replace With. That's where it has to be. Click on the Format one and choose Highlight. Whatever color you have selected as the highlighter up here is what it's going to highlight it in. So let's say I wanted Holmes to be in turquoise here.